The break and retest is a brand new strategy from VEMA Trader that allows you to automate your trade entries well in advance. To place a break and retest trade, come to the strategy section and select break and retest. When you do that, you'll notice a few new things pop up. The first is the Learn More button. The Learn More button will take you to a page that contains this video and detailed explanations of the conditions that you can set on break and retest. You'll also see this visualize tool appears. So this is a really useful tool for visualizing exactly what your conditions are needing to see before VEMA would enter this trade. In terms of the conditions, there's two new ones, distance to break and distance to invalidate. We'll start with the distance to break. So distance to break allows you to define what constitutes a break in your setup. What it does is it gives a percentage from alpha that price needs to move and close below, because we're short. If we were going long, it'd have to close above. It has to close below that current percentage before the distance to break would be satisfied. So we currently have that set to 4, and you can see the visualize tool is mapping 4% from alpha at that point in time. There needs to be a close below that before the distance to break would be satisfied. If I change that, you'll see the visualize tool also moves to match. So let's leave that as 4%. Now the distance to activate. So you might be familiar with this from the bounce strategy. A 0% distance to activate means price needs to touch the trigger directly. So if we just had these two conditions, this trade setup would enter if price came down, closed more than 4% below alpha, then came back and touched alpha, then would enter that trade. If we wanted to give that a bit of a buffer, we could give a 1% buffer, and what that does is it gives us 1% below alpha that price can come back into before that condition is met. If we wanted to see price reject, so we want to see price retest but then push off from that retest, what we do is we add the distance to confirm. So distance to confirm allows us to set a percentage that we want to see price reject. Now, again, it's important to note that this is measured from alpha at the current candle. And when I say current candle, not the candle that exists right now, but the present candle whenever you are looking at the chart. So if price had satisfied these two conditions, we've come down, we've had our break, we've had our retest, and price is currently on this candle, then price would have to be 4% below alpha at that point in time for the distance to confirm to be satisfied. And that's true of all the conditions. They're all measured from alpha at that point in time. Now, if we wanted to make sure that price closed more than 4% from alpha before we got into this trade, we can use the operate on candle close condition. So if we had all these conditions on, what has to happen is price has to come down, move more than 4% below alpha and close there for the break to be satisfied. Then it has to retrace. It has to move back up to within 1% of our distance to activate, so within 1% of alpha, and then it has to reject. It has to move 4% from alpha before then we'll enter this trade if we get a close at that lower than 4% level. So those are all the conditions that can lead to a trade entry. However, if we want to invalidate our trade, there might be certain things where we say, okay, this is not doing what I expected it to do. I don't want VEMA to keep monitoring this trade. There's two conditions for that. So the first of those is the expiry date. What the expiry date does is it gives you a vertical line that you can click and drag to a point in time where if price reaches that before your entry's been met, then we'll invalidate that trade and cease monitoring. So let's say you only wanted this setup to exist for a week. You can just drag that to be a week ahead of the current time. And then if price gets there before your entry conditions have been met, then we'll invalidate this trade. The other new condition is distance to invalidate. So distance to invalidate allows you to invalidate trade setups if they're going the wrong way, if they're not doing what you expected price to do. Important thing with distance to invalidate is your break condition must be satisfied first. So if price came down here, satisfied our break condition, and then continued to head up, say to about there, we could use the distance to invalidate condition to make sure that VEMA would stop entering this trade. How we would do that is measure again from alpha. Let's call that a 3.5% distance to invalidate. So what that is doing is saying if price was to come down, satisfy our break condition, but then head back up, and it doesn't satisfy it would satisfy our distance to activate because it came back within that 1%, but it never satisfied our distance to confirm. Instead, it continued to head up and it got well back above alpha, so it had invalidated our setup. Then VEMA would stop monitoring this trade once it reached 3.5% above alpha. That doesn't have to be a candle close, that could just be a wick, but it has to come down, break and close below our break percentage, and then head back up before this trade would be invalidated and VEMA would stop monitoring that trade. So it's really useful for stopping setups that aren't doing what you expected them to do. So there you have it, guys. That is the break and retest strategy. Hopefully you guys put this to good use. Keep us posted on your progress with it. We're really excited about this strategy and we would love to see how you guys are using it.